For the last years, we have been told to be terrified of carbohydrates. We have been told that eating carbs, especially late at night, is the absolute fastest way to store body fat and ruin our metabolic health. Welcome to Dr. Levitas. You have probably tried cutting them out entirely. You felt exhausted in the gym, your muscles looked flat, and you might spend half your day fighting off miserable cravings. What if I told you that high-quality carbohydrates are not the enemy? What if the problem is not what you are eating, but when you are eating it? Today, we are going to completely flip your nutritional paradigm upside down. We are going to teach you how to weaponize your body's most powerful hormone to exclusively build lean muscle tissue while simultaneously burning off stubborn body fat. We are talking about the science of carb backloading and the biological hack known as the insulin roid. Please take a second to like the video and leave a comment. Your engagement is a huge help to the channel. To master this protocol, we first need to understand the supreme ruler of your metabolism, insulin. When people hear the word insulin, they immediately associate it with diabetes, insulin resistance, and weight gain. And they are not entirely wrong. Insulin is a storage hormone. When you eat carbohydrates, they break down into glucose in your bloodstream. Your pancreas senses this and releases insulin to pull that glucose out of the blood and push it into your cells. If your cells are already full of energy, insulin acts as a relentless, highly efficient fat-storing machine, converting that glucose directly into adipose tissue. But here is the critical piece of the puzzle that the low-carb community often ignores. Insulin is also the single most anabolic hormone in the human body. Anabolic simply means to build up. Insulin is vastly more anabolic than T or growth hormone. It is the master key that unlocks your muscle cells, forcefully driving amino acids and glycogen deep into the tissue to trigger explosive growth and recovery. This is the double-edged sword. You desperately need insulin to build a strong, resilient, muscular frame. But if you trigger it at the wrong time, it makes you gain fat. The secret to optimal body composition is learning how to manipulate your physiology so that insulin only acts on your muscle cells, while your fat cells remain completely locked out. The first step in this biological manipulation begins the exact second you wake up. To execute carb backloading properly, you must consume virtually zero carbohydrates in the morning and throughout the early part of your day. Why do we do this? When you wake up, you have been fasting overnight. Your insulin levels are at their absolute baseline, which is exactly where we want them. Furthermore, your body naturally produces a surge of a hormone called cortisol in the morning to help you wake up and become alert. Cortisol gets a bad reputation as a stress hormone, but in the morning, it is a potent fat burner. It triggers a process called lipolysis. Lipolysis is the biochemical breakdown of stored body fat into free fatty acids that your body can use for fuel. As long as insulin remains low, your body will happily run on your own stored body fat all morning long. You are a walking fat-burning furnace. But the very second you eat a bowl of cereal, a bagel, or even a piece of fruit for breakfast, you spike your insulin. The presence of insulin instantly shuts down lipolysis. The fat-burning furnace is turned off, and your body switches to burning the sugar you just ate. By delaying your carbohydrate intake and sticking to high-quality protein and healthy fats in the early hours, you extend this natural fat-burning window deep into your afternoon. Now we arrive at the catalyst. You have been burning fat all day. Now, you step into the gym and you lift weights. This is where the magic happens, driven by a fascinating cellular mechanism involving something called GLUT4 receptors. GLUT4 receptors are transport proteins that live inside your muscle cells. Think of them as tiny biological doors. Under normal resting conditions, these doors are closed and locked inside the cell. The only way to open them and bring glucose into the muscle is for insulin to come along and unlock them. But human physiology has a brilliant evolutionary workaround. When you perform intense, heavy resistance training, the mechanical contraction of your muscle fibers forces the GLUT4 receptors to migrate to the surface of the cell and swing wide open, completely independent of insulin. Your muscles become incredibly porous and hyper-receptive to nutrients simply because you challenge them physically. This sets the stage for the massive metabolic hack. You have just finished a brutal resistance training session. Your muscle fibers are torn down, your local energy stores are depleted, and your glut-4 doors are wide open, begging for nutrients. Now, and only now, do you introduce an influx of carbohydrates. You eat your rice, your potatoes, or your fruits. This influx of carbs triggers a massive surge of insulin. But remember, the context of your body has entirely changed. Because you haven't eaten carbs all day, your fat cells are essentially asleep. They are not highly sensitive to insulin at this moment. Your muscle cells, however, are screaming for it. They act like a biological black hole. The insulin grabs the glucose from the carbohydrates you just ate and shuttles it exclusively and aggressively directly into your muscle tissue. You get all the explosive, anabolic, muscle-building benefits of the insulin-roid effect, with virtually zero spillover into your fat cells. You are quite literally forcing your body to partition the calories exactly where you want them. To fully grasp why this works so flawlessly without causing weight gain, we must understand the difference between how your liver stores carbohydrates and how your muscles store carbohydrates. When you eat carbs, they are stored as a starchy substance called glycogen. Your liver holds about 100 grams of glycogen. The liver acts like a public charity. Its primary job is to break down that glycogen and release it back into the bloodstream to keep your brain functioning and your blood sugar stable throughout the day. Your muscles, on the other hand, are incredibly selfish. They can hold anywhere from 300 to 600 grams of glycogen, depending on your muscle mass. But once glucose enters a muscle cell, it is trapped. The muscle lacks the enzyme required to release it back into the blood. It can only be used to fuel that specific muscle's contractions. When you carb backload, you are intentionally depleting your muscle glycogen through heavy lifting. When you eat those carbs at night, you are simply refilling a massive, empty tank. Because the tank is completely empty, the carbohydrates have a functional destination. They do not get converted into circulating triglycerides, and they do not get stored as visceral fat around your organs. This brings us to one of the most viral and often misunderstood aspects of carb backloading. You will see fitness influencers claiming that because of this post-workout insulin sensitivity, you can eat absolute junk food, pizzas, donuts, and pastries, and still get incredibly shredded without gaining visceral fat. From a purely thermodynamic and biochemical standpoint of glycogen replenishment, there is a grain of truth here. If your muscle glycogen is entirely depleted, high glycemic carbohydrates from a pastry will rapidly spike insulin and rush into the muscle, just like a bowl of white rice would. The glucose is partitioned into the muscle, and you may not gain fat in that specific moment. However, as a physician, I must emphasize the vital difference between short-term body composition and long-term metabolic health. You can technically manipulate insulin with ultra-processed foods, but those foods are completely devoid of the micronutrients, antioxidants, and fiber your body needs to heal. Furthermore, the industrial seed oils baked into those junk foods will cause the exact cellular inflammation and membrane stiffness we warned you about in previous videos. To optimize carb backloading for sustainable fat loss and ultimate longevity, you should focus your post-workout feasts on high-quality, dense carbohydrates. Think sweet potatoes, jasmine rice, quinoa, and fruits. You use the biological hack, but you fuel it with premium materials. Finally, let's address the morning grogginess that so many people suffer from. For years, we were told not to eat carbs before bed because they would sit in our stomachs and turn to fat while we sleep. We now know that that is metabolically false. In fact, eating your carbohydrates in the evening is one of the most effective ways to optimize your sleep architecture. When you consume carbohydrates at night, the insulin response helps clear competing amino acids from your bloodstream, allowing an amino acid called tryptophan to cross the blood-brain barrier more easily. Your brain converts that tryptophan into serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter, which is then converted into melatonin, your primary sleep hormone. Simultaneously, the carbohydrates suppress nighttime cortisol, reducing stress and anxiety. You fall into a deeper, more restorative phase of sleep. Because your muscles spent the entire night quietly absorbing that glucose and repairing themselves, you wake up the next morning feeling incredibly refreshed. Your muscles feel full and recovered, and you are perfectly primed to repeat the fat-burning cycle all over again. You avoid the heavy, brain-fogged mornings that plague people who eat massive carb-heavy breakfasts. The doctor's verdict: Embracing the good carbs. Insulin is not your enemy. It is simply a powerful tool that you have been using at the wrong time. By embracing the principles of carb backloading, you can align your nutrition with your biology. By fasting from carbs in the morning to maximize lipolysis and strategically flooding your system with nutrients only after you have opened the muscular doors through resistance training, you can build a strong, resilient body while achieving sustainable fat loss. You can finally enjoy the foods you love without the guilt, because you understand exactly where those nutrients are going. Stay strong, eat strategically, and I will see you in the next video. Watch this video suggestion. It was especially picked for you. Also share, comment, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. It helps a ton with the algorithm. Remain tuned for future videos to empower your health and fitness journey. So, stay healthy, stay happy, and keep going.